Welcome back to a special edition of Cardboard Kitchen. If you're new here, um, I'm Chef Dan. Uh, Today I got something a little special for you guys. Since kind of everything's kind of like wee. Um, I've been up since 4 a.m. Hooray! Fun stuff. That being said, we're gonna get into it with a little bit of this. It is currently, I think it's Hispanic Heritage Month. It's like the mid of September through the mid of October. It's really a weird time to do Hispanic Heritage Month. But there is something in the Hispanic heritage that I don't get to enjoy hardly ever, but I find it fascinating and sometimes fun to watch. Very rarely, very, very rarely. And that is the Luchadores. Everybody knows about the Matadors. It's predominantly in Spain. A lot of people know about the mariachi bands. There's a hot sauce bottle with like a mariachi guy on it. Those are the more commonly known things. Luchadors. That's the Hispanic version of wrestling. They got some fun stuff. So with that being said, they call me El Pollo Loco. Um, so today I just kind of want to gradually go over one of my preferred commanders here in the kitchen if I'm playing something like what might be considered a luchador deck where I'm fighting, or if it's a multi luchador situation where there's multiple guys, multiple opponents. Obviously, we talk about commander, so you have usually 3 opponents. And this particular guy is Marisi, Breaker of the Coil. I like him. He's a cat warrior. He's legendary. Looks pretty cool. He doesn't so much remind me of a luchador, but with the artwork of how he is, he could very well be a luchador. Just instead of wearing a mask, he's wearing face paint. Marisi, Breaker of the Coil is a generic, a red, a white, and a green. For a legendary creature cat warrior, he's a 5/4. So pretty good stats for 4 mana to begin with. The first ability, your opponents can't cast spells during combat. It's not preventing your opponents from casting spells on your turn. It's just saying your opponents can't cast spells in combat. Now, that's not strictly combat on your turn. That's combat on everybody's turn. If you're in the combat phase, whether it's declaring attackers, declaring blockers, damage step, whatever, if you're in the combat phase, your opponents cannot cast spells. Period. Doesn't matter whose turn it is. As long as Marisi's in play, they can't do anything. Where we really like Marisi and where he shines the most, I believe, especially if your table's playing a lot of like combat synergistic type stuff where it's like I have to go to combat and do things, is his second ability. Now, I'll go ahead and tell you this: if you're sitting at a table and you're playing Marisi and everybody else at that table's playing like a storm deck or a spell slinger deck, play something else or leave the table, because Marisi's not doing enough. Those guys are not winning by playing creatures and swinging with them. Those people are winning by playing a creature and then the same turn playing a whole bunch of instants and sorceries, so the creature never has to attack. And Marisi's secondary ability is whenever a creature you control deals combat damage to a player, goad each creature that player controls. Now, the goad mechanic states if a creature is goaded, the ability reads, this creature must attack on the next available combat that it can, and it is not allowed to attack the player or a planeswalker controlled by the player that goaded it unless they're the only ones it could swing at. So if you're sitting at a table and everybody's playing creature-based decks that win through combat and all that stuff, and you sit down and you're playing Marisi and you're just like, cool, I'm gonna punch you. As soon as you hit whatever player, all creatures they control on their next turn are goaded. Meaning they're gonna, all of those creatures, if able, have to attack and must attack a player or planeswalker controlled by a player that is not you. It helps move games along, because, you know, if you're like, I'm gonna play a couple of things here and there, and then somebody else is like, I'm gonna play a bunch of ramp spells, and then like turn 7, I'm gonna play a 10/10. There's creatures in white that your opponents can't block. They have an ability called Shadow. Shadow was a dumb ability. It's great. So the Shadow ability states, this creature cannot block, nor can it be blocked by any creature that does not have Shadow. So you can only block it with Shadow. Most people don't play Shadow creatures. The problem with Shadow creatures is it's a double-edged sword. Sure, they can't be blocked, but you also can't use them to block anything that doesn't have Shadow. There is a card that gives a creature Shadow, but it's in black, which is not the colors of Marisi, making it a little difficult. But yeah, like, if you play a creature and somebody else is like, I ramped and now I've got a 10/10, or I've got 3 7/7s, or whatever it is, and you're like, oh, I have a 1/1 and it's unblockable, I'm going to punch you for 1. Now all your creatures are goaded. Hey, those 3 7/7s, or whatever they are, they have to go somewhere else next turn if able, and they cannot come at me unless I'm the only one that you could swing at. There are some unique tricks for the goaded mechanic that you can use to get around having to attack. Most people don't know them. Most people don't use them. Most people aren't worried about it because goad is not an overly used ability. You don't see it. They put things in most precons that goad, but it's like a one-time goad. I don't know. They printed this guy, and he's like, whenever me or any of my buddies touch you, just touch you, everything you have is goaded until my next turn. That's the other thing. The goad mechanic lasts on that creature for every combat that creature goes through until the start of the player who goaded its next turn. So if I'm sitting at a table with 4 people, or 3 other people, so there's 4 of us in total, and I'm the person that goaded a creature, that creature is goaded until the start of my next turn. Meaning if that creature goes through 8 combat steps before the start of my next turn, it is bound by the goad mechanic in each of those combat steps. If it only goes through 1, that's not a whole lot to worry about, but there are a whole bunch of different decks out there that they love to do. There's a couple of dragons that love to take infinite combats. There's a CDH deck that's 5 colors that loves to take infinite combats. There's a lot of stuff out there that, if you're playing creatures, likes to potentially take infinite combats, or at least extra combats. There's a lot of stuff out there that's like, ooh, I get like 1 extra combat phase on each of my turns, or I got a combat phase, I did a thing, second main phase I played a card, it gives me another combat phase, then I have another main phase, then I play another spell, it gives me another combat phase. There are decks out there that love to get 2, 3, 4 combat phases a turn if those decks aren't based around doing infinite combats. If you're playing some of the infinite combat stuff, Marisi's probably not winning if they hit their infinite combat loop, because sure, they're bound by the goad to attack other people, but if those other players aren't set up to be able to take out the problematic pieces that give infinite combats, those players die, and the entire time the infinite combat player is... All of the infinite combats that I know of help you build your board while you're doing the combat. So by the time it gets around to attacking the person playing Marisi, they've got an army, and it's just like, cool, you don't need 5 extra combats to kill me, even though you're goated. One swing and I'm pretty much dead because I can't block stuff. Anyway, that being said, Maurice's fun. He's what we call Naya colors: red, green, and white. It's the Naya shard from Shards of Alara block time frame, where they took 3 colors at a time and broke them up into shards. Not like Ikoria, where they broke them up into wedges. Ikoria's got your 1 allied color combination and then 2 enemy color combinations. The Alara time frame you have your 2 allied color combinations and 1 enemy color combination. So whenever you break it down as to how it connects, it looks like a shard. And in Ikoria, whenever you break down how things connect to form those color combinations, those 3 color combinations, it looks like a wedge. So the Alara time frame, those color combinations are referred to as shards. And the Ikoria time frame, there was another time frame where we've done stuff similar to Ikoria that was 3 colors, but it wasn't like a huge 3 color thing. But those color combinations are essentially referred to as the wedge color combinations. Each one has its own name. Green, white, and black, which is a wedge, is known as Abzan. Green, blue, and black, which is another wedge, is known as Sultai. Naya is the shard that we're talking about, but another fun shard color combination that has like 3 or 4 different CDH commander options is Jund, which is black, red, and green. So black and red is a color combination. Green and red is a color combination. Those 2 different color combinations are allies sharing red in the middle. And then your enemy color combination is green-black. Tons of fun stuff there. Some of the Lucha related stuff that we would be playing in Marisi. I'm not going to do a full deck list. I want to try and keep this short if possible. Something I was thinking about on my way home from work. I was just like, I kind of want to do something a little fun. Since it is Spanish Heritage Month and all that fun stuff. And working with some Hispanics, I'm trying to brush up on my Spanish. I'm trying to enjoy the Hispanic culture a little more. Anyway, back on topic. So a card that I think is fantastic that fits the theme of a Luchador deck is a card called Taunt from the Rampart. So the name sounds like something you would see a Luchador do in a match, where they would get up on the corner, which could be the Rampart, and they would taunt their opponent or whatever, and then they'd probably jump on top of them. It's 3 generic red and white for Taunt from the Rampart. It's a sorcery, so you can only play it on your turn. The ability is goad all creatures your opponents control, so it doesn't affect yours, until your next turn. Those creatures can't block, so it'll only affect the creatures currently in play as the spell resolves, but in addition to them being goaded, they are now also unable to block. That's kind of cool, because now it's not just Luchadors in a cage fight. It's Luchadors in a cage fight trying to see who has the best endurance capability, because now they're just trading blows. It's not so much about I'm going to do the cool move, or I'm going to pin you, or this or that. It's now, it's a cage fight, and there's a time limit on it, and the time limit is who can endure the most until this effect goes away, or until the time limit's up. Another card that we would play, which is the first variation of something like Taunt from the Rampart, is a card called Disrupt Decorum. It's 2 generic red. Goad all creatures you don't control. Simple. Does the same thing, cost you 1 less mana. It's a solid color instead of a 2-color card. Doesn't add the whole benefit of they can't block. But whatever. You could, like I said, you could play some of the creatures that have shadow that are in white. They're all the Soltari something. The Soltari creatures all have shadow. Some of them are good, some of them are bad, some of them are okay. They're also really weak. Like the one I'm looking at is Soltari Visionary. It's all generic white for a 2/2. So it's 3 mana for a 2/2. It has shadow. It has an extra ability, which is fun. If you want to play it, you don't have to. I probably would not. Actually, I probably would. This would probably be the only Soltari that makes it into a list that I would build because it's 3 mana for a 2/2. It has shadow. Again, shadow states this creature can't. This creature can block or be blocked by only creatures with shadow. So anything that doesn't have shadow, it cannot block it, nor can it be blocked by it. The additional ability is if Soltari Visionary damages any player, meaning if it deals combat damage, the updated Oracle text is if it deals combat damage to an opponent, a player specifically, destroy target enchantment that player controls. It's probably the only Soltari card creature that I would play in a Marisi list, just because there's a lot more Enchantress lists going around now. And this is a great way to just be like, I get to hit you, I goad your creatures, and I blow up an enchantment you have. Seems fun. I mean, there's lots of stuff you can play in the deck. It's green, it's white, and it's red. You can play fight spells if you wanted to. A personal favorite of mine that I would play in the deck is a card called Predator Ooze. It's green for a 1/1, but it's indestructible. Whenever Predator Ooze attacks, you put a +1/+1 counter on Predator Ooze. Whenever a creature dealt damage by Predator Ooze dies during the same turn in which it was dealt damage, you put a +1/+1 counter on Predator Ooze. It's naturally indestructible. It is 3 green mana. It's a little rough in a 3-color deck. But it's like the best luchador ever. He's never going away. Most likely he's never going away. And every time he goes to throw a punch, he gets a little bit stronger. And if you ever have to block it and your creature dies because it was dealt enough damage to die by the Predator Ooze, he gets even stronger. You know, he's a luchador that's eating his opponents for breakfast. How cool is that? I know, right? Like, think about this. El Pollo Loco. But the chicken gets giant because it's eating the scrawny opponents that can't stand up. And the bigger the chicken gets, the bigger the opponents are it can eat. As one big chicken. For those of you listening, if you don't understand the El Pollo Loco phrasing, El Pollo Loco in Spanish means crazy chicken. You could also play Kutsil Malamet Exemplar. It's another cat warrior. It's a legendary creature. It's green, white, and a generic for a 3/3. Has a pretty nice ability. Opponents can't cast spells during your turn. So with this in play, on your turn, you don't have to worry about anything. As far as your opponents casting spells, they can still activate abilities, but whatever. The other ability is whenever one or more creatures you control, each with power greater than its base power, deals combat damage to a player, draw a card. Something to note, this triggers per an opponent, not per a creature hitting an opponent. So like something that triggers per a creature hitting opponent would be if I attacked one player with 3 creatures, I would get a trigger from each of those creatures. This is saying if I attack one player with 3 creatures or more creatures other than one, if a creature count attacking a player is greater than 1, regardless of how many of them there are, I'm getting one trigger in total from that opponent. But because of how this is worded, I could send one creature at each opponent and get a trigger from each of those opponents, as long as those creatures have power greater than their base power when they deal damage. So something like that being great is Zada Hedron Grinder. So Zada is a 3 generic red creature. He's a goblin that states whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell that targets only Zada, you copy that spell for each other creature you control that it could target and resolve those copies for each of those creatures. So with Zada, you could play things that give, you could play your 1 mana instant speed spells if you have Zada in play. You have Marisi, you have Zada, you have a whole bunch of other creatures, and you've got Kutzel in play. And you're just like, cool, I'm going to swing some creatures at each of you. Let blocks be declared before blocks or before damage is dealt. Play a thing targeting Zada that gives +1/+0 and first strike, or +1/+0 and trample. Because first off, nobody can respond to you on your turn. Secondly, your mid-combat, Marisi's ability is not allowing your opponents to play combat tricks. Which is where Marisi's great, because he allows you to play combat tricks, but not your opponents, which is fun. So if you played something that gave +1/+1 in trample, or +1/+1 in first strike, whatever the case is, all of your creatures, as long as you're only targeting Zada, all of your creatures get a copy of that spell targeting each of them. Bonus points if the spell you use as it resolves says draw a card, because now you draw a card for each of those creatures you control from the spell resolving that you use to target Zada. On top of that, if those creatures now have a base power greater than they have a power greater than their base power, for each opponent that gets dealt combat damage from any of those creatures, you're drawing another card. So if you have 3 opponents and you're swinging 3 creatures each, and you play this card, you draw 9 from the resolution of the card because of Zada. And then, as long as each opponent gets hit by one of those creatures, you're drawing an additional 3 cards. So a 1 mana spell, because of Zada's ability and you having a board state, is now saying, I just drew 12 cards for 1 red or 1 green or whatever the case is. It's pretty fun, pretty cool. The other thing is you can use Zada's ability defensively. A lot of people don't use this card. I like the card personally. It doesn't see play ever. I've never seen anybody use it. When I started playing during that time frame, Type 2.0, or as we call it today, Standard, nobody played this card back then either. It's a great defensive card. It's called, I believe the name of it's Righteousness or something like that. It's 1 white, instant speed. Target blocking creature gets +7/+7 until end of turn. 1 white mana, target blocking creature just gets a bonus of 7 to the front and back end. The restriction is they have to be blocking. But hey, that's great. So if you're on the defensive and you've got a board of creatures and somebody's like, I'm going to build up a whole bunch of dudes, and then I'm going to play Craterhoof and give everything +8/+8 and trample and punch you, and you're like, cool, I got roughly 1 creature each, maybe 2 or 3 underneath that Craterhoof, since it's a 13/13 or whatever the case is. And then you're like, oh, by the way, blocks declared before damage, Righteousness targeting Zada. As long as I have other creatures blocking, the spell could effectively target them, so Zada's ability would trigger and target each of them as well. So now for 1 white mana, my entire board state that's blocking got +7/+7. It's a nifty combat trick. You don't ever see it. Most of the time, if you're having to use a combat trick like that, you're probably dead, or the creature you're using it on only needs like a bonus of like 2 or 3. Like it doesn't need a full 7. Um, Although the full 7 bonus can allow a 1/1 to trade to either beat or trade with some of the more problematic creatures in Commander at the higher levels. So, I mean, that's kind of cool. Like, I have a 1/1 token. Cool. With it. Now it's an 8/8 and because it's blocking, and I can do, I can trade with an 8/8, or I can beat out something that's a 7/7 or lower or whatever. Kind of fun, kind of cool. Something else that kind of feels like a luchador card is Iroas, God of Victory. Feels like a luchador card. It doesn't really make sense for lucha libre type stuff. So it's got a whole host of abilities. The two, uh, the two abilities that are good is creatures you control have menace, meaning they have to be blocked by 2 or more other opposing creatures. So that's kind of great. Is it's like, oh, here's a luchador that's, each one of my creatures now turns into a luchador that is so strong or so fearsome that it has to be a 2-on-1 match, which sounds unfair, but makes for a more fun, engaging match or story in the wrestling world. The other relevant ability is prevent all damage that would be dealt to attacking creatures you control. So now, not only do your opponents have to block with multiple creatures, my creatures, as long as they're attacking, will take no damage whatsoever. So I don't have to worry about any tricksy damage related stuff you might have. I don't have to worry about death touch creatures. Ain't got to worry about it, because my creatures aren't going to take any of the damage as long as they're swinging. I mean, yeah, that's pretty much what I wanted to go over as far as the deck is concerned. I mean, again, if you're gonna build Marisi, I think of Marisi as like a luchador who just loves having like a battle royale where it's like 4 or 5 luchadors all in the arena, and it's basically just a battle royale. And then it's like, okay, well, here's what's gonna happen, guys. I'm gonna slap each one of you and piss you off to the point where you're just gonna go at it for a free-for-all, and I'm gonna stand back and be the last man standing, or hope to be the last man standing, whatever the case is. Like I said, I didn't want to go over like a whole deck rundown or whatever. Just wanted to talk about some of the cards that I thought would be luchador-esque relation. This has been Cardboard Kitchen. If you've stayed till this part and you're new, this is a show for all players of Magic the Gathering for the Commander format, regardless of your level of activity, I guess. Your preferred level of play. I'll say that, because Wizards of the Coast actually has a breakdown of like preferred level of play and like what category you fall under. Whether you're starting out, whether you've been playing 25, 30 years, whatever the case is. I think the games have been around for about 32 or 33. It might have been around for a little bit longer than that. I know the game. I know that I'm older than the game, but I'm only like 4 or 5 years older than 4 years old. Wow, really? That doesn't seem right. That doesn't seem right at all. That means the game's been around for roughly 31 years, right? Yeah. Okay, so The game's been around for 31 years, and I've been playing for about 25 of those 31 years. Wow, that's oof. Mm. Mm 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 mm. Um, if you like the content and you want to see more content, again, I'm between work and everything else. I'm trying to find time to be able to get more of these videos out to you guys. I think it would be great. I think it would be fantastic. I want to get you guys some gameplay videos. Problem with the gameplay videos is I don't have a top-down camera, so if I manage to get any gameplay videos, it's going to be from me inviting friends over and us sitting down and me recording the whole thing, and then trying to make that work. Just because I don't have a top-down camera, and I don't, even if I got a top-down camera, I don't know where I would set it up at. Kind of really tight on space at the moment. I would love to be able to like move stuff around on my current area desk type thing so that I could actually do that and have a top-down camera that's mounted somewhere. I'm still working on trying to set up a Patreon. I have a Discord. I've made a Discord. So as soon as I manage to get the Patreon stuff set up, I will link the Discord stuff to the Patreon. I'm still trying to get a hold of a couple of people to be mods in the Discord. I got one guy down pat because his schedule allows him to be. He's in a field that requires him to like be on communication devices all day. So he can just have like Discord up as a background thing and pop in whenever he needs to handle something or whatever the case is. But I want to get, he sleeps. He does sleep like everybody. He does sleep. I want to get another 2 or 3 moderators just in case like somebody's awake super late at night and a moderator's awake and the rest of us aren't, or whatever the case is. On top of that, I want to bring you guys some streaming videos. I'm trying to get something built on MTG Arena for Brawl so that I could play like 1v1 brawls. That would be something else, is if I bring you that kind of content, that would be a Patreon related thing. You would have to be part of the Patreon group once I get it set up so that you could be in the Discord so that I could send the link or the ad in the Discord for those games. Because I'm not going to sit here and stream and like put that info on stream. Even though like you could probably see it if I put it on stream, depending on how I set up the screen. But that would be something like, if I'm doing a stream and you guys wanted to play some Brawl and I had the time and the ability, like I would put that info in the Discord. Again, I do have a Discord up for the channel. Working on Patreon, working on getting a couple more moderators. Just because I don't think the two of us could handle it effectively. Again, if you like the content and you're not subscribed, because I know a number of you aren't, go ahead and subscribe. Hit that notification bell so that you can be notified every time I upload one of these fun, kooky videos. Again, today was a spur-of-the-moment thing, made it the last-minute decision, talking about Luchadores. For Hispanic Heritage Month. And share. Obviously, if you're watching my content, you're probably watching other similar content. Share my video with your friends. Maybe you've got friends or you're in groups that, have a lot of like magic-related stuff. Share, subscribe. It's free. It's free for you guys to subscribe and help support the channel so that I can hopefully get enough information from you guys to know that I can quit my day job and do this and bring you guys content and make more videos and do like have the ability to do streams and all that kind of stuff and interact more. Um, I think this is my second or third video this month, so it's been a huge uptick. But again, this video was a last minute idea. My last video, I had contemplated it and then started working on a deck list and decided to just kind of like throw it to you guys and see what happens. Yeah, subscribe, notification bell, share it on social media. You know, if you hit share and it brings up stuff depending on what phone you're on, you can actually, there should be an option to copy to clipboard. So it'll copy a link to the video to your clipboard on your phone or your iPad or whatever you're on. You can go into Messenger, you can go into text messages, whatever it is that you have. Bring up a whole bunch of people, put in their names, make a big old group chat, and just be like, boom, here's the link, and everybody will have access to the link. But yeah, that's going to be it for today. So thanks for sticking around. I appreciate it. I greatly appreciate it. And I will see you guys next time on Cardboard Kitchen.